Hey everybody, this is Perch, and we've got a nice little email here from a viewer. I need a fancier way to say that, I think. I mean, we got a nice little email. Sounds dorky. I don't know. I can do a better job. Anyway, it says, Hey Perch, you touched on this before, but I was thinking, do you think the big comic brands, Marvel, DC, Dark Horse, Image, etc., should bring back other genres of comics like manga does? I think one of the big issues with these new, quote, SJW writers is they want to tell their stories, but since their comics sell awfully, they blend it into superhero comics. Do you think that they bring back other genres like slice of life books, and the big companies actually markets them? Would it be a better step into fixing the industry? It absolutely would. It would be a better step. It would be smarter because it would be more honest. It would be more direct. And when I say that, I say this primarily for the people creating this content, for the people who are into it, to find it. I think this is one of the big problems that current Western comic books have, and nobody just wants to say it out loud. Is that they are dipping their toe into other genres. They talk about expanding the audience. When they talk about expanding the audience, what they do not mean, and are whether they directly do not mean it or indirectly do not mean it, they do not mean, hey, we're going to bring a bunch of new people to become superhero comic readers. What they mean is, we know there's people out there, we believe there's people out there who like YA, who like Webtoon, who like those kinds of stuff, and we're going to create some comic books that kind of feel like that. And then people will buy it because, it kind of feels like that. However, as a business strategy, it's stupid. People who know what they like, if they know they like a certain genre of comic, they're just going to go out and try and buy that genre. They're not going to say, you know what, I really like a slice of life, and I think I'll look for it in this superhero comic that is named The Avengers and has been around for 60 years and has a long track record, but I hear it's doing kind of different things now, so I think I'll give it a try. That's probably the most unlikely outcome of this entire process. Whereas if Marvel put like a little imprint, Marvel Heroes, kind of like DC, screwed around with this with Young Animal and Black Label. The problem is they seem confused themselves what went into those different brands. What really was Vertigo versus Black Label versus Young Animal versus what was Bendis's, just blink and it's gone imprint? Wonder Comics, was that it? I don't know. Anyway, they're just, if you did something like that and you committed to the bit and you actually understood what you were doing, meaning, you had a plan for how this stuff was going to work, then I think that is the right approach. You basically, come in and you say, hey, do you like horror? Here's horror. Do you call it DC horror? Call it DC slice of life. Call it DC romance. You can call it whatever you want, but that's the level of directness that is needed. Don't be subtle. Just straight out do it. And I think what you've seen is kind of the amalgamation of all the worst possible plans. You see the comic publishers, in some cases, starting with a reasonable idea, not necessarily a good idea, but at least a reasonable one, of saying, hey, these digital comics efforts, they seem to be growing. People like them. So we should do one for ourselves. Okay, sounds good. And then, they then take or they go and they recruit a writer who's good at that. And they proceed to, then have that writer work on, I don't know, Deadpool. And then, of course, it all comes off bizarre because, that's not the Deadpool that the traditional audience wants. And the people who that writer is supposed to be catering to don't come along. And so nobody gets what they want. And it's kind of like this. It's a half step. Go all in. I would like to see Marvel Slice of Life. That's the brand. It's got the Marvel logo, and it's got Slice of Life, and it's going to be comics that are more relationship based, and they're going to have cooking in them, or what? Who knows what you want to do? Go hire the talent who knows how to write that kind of stuff, and go nuts. That is exactly the right approach. But the wrong approach is kind of do it halfsies and then, wonder why, and then scream at your audience for not liking your new attempts. Because that's the other thing. I think these people get frustrated when, their attempts at getting into new genres don't take, and so they start yelling at the fans. Why aren't you? Why didn't you listen? Why didn't you go along? Why didn't you do this? I mean, it would be laughable if it wasn't so painful, but it is very painful. It's painful to watch because some of these people. I use this example before. Rainbow Rowell is a successful writer in YA. And when I say successful, what I mean by that is she has books on the bestseller list. She has books that she has written that have been profitable, carried by lots of places, and in her field, she is a success. Okay? You can't dispute that. The numbers are there. Now, you take Rainbow Rowell and you say, hey, she wanted to write comics. Let's get her in here, and she can write some comics, and we'll put her on. What did they put her on? They put her on Runaways, but didn't they? Wasn't she on something else as well before that? I don't. No, I don't. I guess not. Maybe it was just Runaways. Anyway, they put her on a comic. She proceeds to then take that comic and make it as much like what she normally writes as possible, which irritated the crap out of fans of that comic who suddenly saw a complete tonal shift in the book. Now, in fairness, you can't beat up on Rowell too much for this. Rowell is doing exactly what she was hired to do. She was hired to take this book and bring her style to it, and she did. The problem wasn't Rowell. The problem was the people who made this decision in the first place, which was a stupid decision. This was taking somebody who was successful in a field and intentionally putting a bunch of they handicapped her. I don't know if is that the right PC word to use now? I don't know. Anyway, they basically made her job far more difficult by trying to shoehorn her style into something that already had a very established story and plot and theme and everything else, and that was nuts. That it made Rowell less successful. It made the book sales less successful. It was just on every level dumb. That's the think about it a different way. Now let's imagine a completely different world where, like your question, they came in and said, we're creating the Marvel YA Marvel slice of life. It's aimed at this audience, the audience that likes web comics and newer readers who aren't familiar or just like superhero stuff. And we've gone out, we've hired Rainbow Rowell. She's a successful writer there. And maybe we've gotten a few others that are in that same area to come in and write these books. And no, they're not going to cross over with the MCU. They're completely separate. No, you probably won't even see MCU characters in any of these books, because what would be the point? Maybe it will be like, this will be that you could call it the Marvel Universe 617. It's the neighbor to the 616. And so every now and then the characters like watching TV and there's, Spider-Man swinging around doing something. But it's not a story about Spider-Man. It's a story about a bunch of high school friends who stumble onto some crazy secret and have to figure out what to do with it. I don't know. I'm not a YA. I'm clearly not a writer there. So, but anyway, maybe you have a story about somebody who's trying to operate a restaurant in Manhattan, and the restaurant keeps getting blown up whenever the Green Goblin starts throwing bombs around, and so the story is about how they struggle to kind of keep their business open and serve customers and provide a little bit of love to every bite. I mean, again, whatever, that comic is not for me. However, if they put out that comic and they said, here's who it's marketed for, we're going to try and sell it in places, not the local comic shop, but we're going to, find avenues in Barnes & Noble or Scholastic or whatever it is, that there's a very strong chance that would be successful. There's a very strong chance a lot of the creators would be happy. I have no idea what Vita Ayala wants to do with Vita's life. I don't know if Vita is excited by writing New Mutants, or if Vita would really prefer doing these kinds of, again, YA slice of life type stories. I maybe if that's what Vita wants to do with Vita's life, again, why are we taking Vita and putting Vita on Dawn of X New Mutants and saying, hey, kind of just try and make this a little bit like what you're comfortable with, but don't lose the audience as well. We still want to make sales. Like, what a dumb thing to do. Everybody would be happier if it took this approach. Do you think some of these writers that people bitch at every day on YouTube, you think they wouldn't prefer just doing their slice of life cooking stories as, for the market labeled that way? Do you think that they take pleasure in saying, some of you do think what I'm about to say is true, but do you think some take pleasure in the idea of like saying, hey, I'm going to get put on Captain America, and I'm gonna transform Captain America into a owner of a food truck, and he's never gonna use a shield or fight or anything. He's gonna serve hash to a audience of people in Hoboken. No writer really wants to do that. I've definitely been with some writers and some editors where they've talked about things like that as a joke, like, wouldn't it be funny if we could do this kind of thing and it would, tank all the sales and it would be completely subversive and hilarious. But nobody actually wants to do that. Who is smart? I have to put that in disclaimer in there because there's probably some people in there who find it hilarious to destroy things. But in general, most people would like to, I don't know, have job security, get paid, write things that people actually give a damn about. Have their lives have meaning. I mean, these are all things that typically people want in life. Most people don't want to just, do stuff and have it just disappear into the garbage bin of, life. They would actually prefer to, do things people read. It's the reason they got into comics. They want to do things that people actually read. And so it feels like on every front, this would be better for publishers, better for business, better for creators. Just do what, again, you said at the beginning, Japan does this. They have genres that they very clearly identify, and writers write for those genres. You do not see in Japan a bunch of writers who are, traditional horror writers trying to do romance books because, I don't know, that somebody at Shueisha thought that would be amusing. Who knows? They stick to what they're good at, and they have a happier life as a result. I think better for the publishers, better for businesses, better for creators. How much of this bullshit that we deal with on a day-to-day basis around the arguing and the fighting would largely go away if the publishers just had very established genres and the people got to write for the genre that they're good at and make more money? And by the way, the whole argument would disappear if you had a angry comics fan come running in bitching about why there's not more superhero fights in a romance book that was clearly labeled and published as romance. You wouldn't have an argument. You would just say that person's an idiot. Like, nobody goes to the bookstore, picks up a romance novel, and goes, why aren't there more talking cartoon animals in this? This is bullshit. Nobody does that because they know what they're in for. And so it feels like a lot of things could just be settled if we just were more clear about it. But anyway, great mail, great question, and as you can tell, I've got a point of view on it. So anyway, let me know what you think in the comments below. Like and subscribe, of course, and thanks for listening.